welcome. This is Lucidarium. If you'd like, leave a comment and say where in the world you're listening from and what the time is where you are, or anything else you feel like sharing. It makes a quiet map of people all settling into the same night from every corner of the earth, and it's a gentle thing to find in the morning. A like or a subscribe, only if you feel like it helps someone else who's lying awake tonight to find their way here. That's all the waking world business there is. Settle yourself now and let the lights go low, and we'll go back a long way, slowly and in no hurry at all. It is very early and it is cold, and it is a long time ago. There are a few low houses along the shoulder of a slope made of earth and cut branches and turf laid over, and they are dark, and the people inside them are asleep. In the open ground between them, the fire is burned down to a bed of soft red ash with a grey skin across it, and now and then some part of it settles inward and gives off a small sound and is quiet again. Nothing else is moving. The air is completely still, in the way it is still only at that hour, before anything has begun to warm and lift, and the smoke that is left in the ash goes straight up in a thin thread and does not lean at all. A woman comes out from one of the houses, stooping under the low doorway with a hide pulled around her shoulders. Her breath goes out white in front of her and drifts and disappears. She stands for a moment beside the fire without adding anything to it, only looking at it, at the red showing through the grey where the crust is broken, and then she turns and walks up the slope, past the last of the houses, over ground that is stiff with frost and gives slightly under her feet, to a flat stone at the edge of the settlement where she has sat on many other mornings, and she sits down there and pulls the hide closer around her and looks out. The stone is cold through the hide. It is a cold that comes up slowly rather than all at once, working into her through the hide and through her legs, and she knows it will be there until the sun is properly up, and she sits in it anyway. Because this is the hour, and this is the place. The grass around the stone is grey with frost and holds the shape of her feet where she has stepped. Below her, the ground falls away into a valley that is still entirely dark, so dark that there is nothing in it to look at, only a depth, a place where the land goes down and the darkness pools. And beyond the valley, the hills stand up black and soft-edged, and above the hills the sky has begun, very faintly, to lift. She is waiting for the sun. She has waited for it here many times. She knows the shape of the ridge against the sky better than she knows almost anything, better than the inside of the house she came out of, better than her own hands, which she has looked at less. She knows the long low run of it. She knows the notch near the middle where the ground dips down and comes back up. She knows the single old tree standing further along, leaning a little, bare at this season. She knows the place further still, where the ridge shoulders up and then eases down again and goes on toward the far end of the valley and is lost. She has looked at that line so many times that she could draw it in the ash with a stick, and she has, sometimes for a child, though the ash gets swept away and it does not matter, because the ridge is always there in the morning to be looked at again, and she knows something else about it, which is that the sun does not come up in the same place along that ridge every morning. It moves, not quickly and not by much. From one morning to the next, the difference would hardly be seen at all, and there are mornings when it cannot be seen, when it looks exactly as it looked before. And only the memory of a great many mornings put together makes it certain that anything has changed. But she has sat here through a great many mornings, and she has watched the place where the light first breaks travel slowly along the ridge, away toward the cold end of the valley, a little further each day, and a little further, and a little further, until it has gone as far as it goes and hangs there for a while as though it has forgotten what it was doing, and then it turns and comes back slowly, morning after morning, all the long way along the ridge toward the warm end, and reaches the far limit of that, and waits there a while too, and turns again, away and back, away and back. It has done that for as long as she has watched, and for as long as the old woman who first brought her up here to sit on this stone had watched before that. And it will do it after. She could not say why she has never asked why, in the way that a question is asked out loud and expects an answer. It is simply what the sun does, the way water runs downhill, and smoke goes up, and stones stay where they are put. And it is a thing she keeps in herself, the way she keeps the path down to the river, and the sound of her own children's voices. But she knows what it is for. When the light comes up at the notch in the middle of the ridge, and the frost is on the grass, and the days are still short, the year is turning back toward the warm. When it has travelled on past the old tree, the ground will be soft enough to work. When it has gone further, out toward the far shoulder, the berries will be black on the bushes down by the river, and the people will go down with baskets and come back with their hands stained. And when it turns and comes all the way back again along the whole length of the ridge, and the light breaks once more at the notch, they will be inside the houses by dusk, with the fire built high and the food put by. And it will be cold like this. None of that is written anywhere. There is nothing to write it on, and no writing. It is carried in her and in one or two others, and it is passed by sitting on a stone in the dark with somebody younger and pointing at a hill. The sky is a little grey now. Not light, only less dark at the low edge, above the ridge, so that the black of the hills has come away from the black of the sky and become a thing of its own, an outline, a long dark shape lying down across the bottom of the world. Above it the stars are still out, though fewer than there were. She knows them too in the same way, without names of the kind that would be used now, though there are names and stories that go with them, and the stories are longer than the winter. She knows that some of them wheel round through the night and come back to the same place before morning. She knows that others rise on one side of the world and cross over and go down on the other, and that they always cross in the same way, at the same pace, and never wander from it. She knows that some are gone for part of the year altogether, and are not to be found anywhere, no matter how long the night, and then come back. And she knows which one of them comes back low near dawn, just when the river is about to swell, and which one is standing overhead when the birds come over in their long ragged lines calling, so high up that they are only sound and small marks moving. That is the way the year is held, not counted and not written and not reasoned out. Watched and remembered and watched again the next year to see whether it holds, and it holds, and it is trusted, and so it is trusted, and so it is told to somebody else. The moon, too. The moon she knows by its shape, the slow swelling and the slow thinning of it, and she can keep that count on her hand if she wants a shorter measure than the sun will give her. So many nights from the thin curve to the full round, and so many back again, and then the dark nights when it is nowhere, and then the thin curve once more, low down, lying on its back. There is a rhythm inside the long rhythm. The sun makes the great slow turn along the ridge, from the notch out to the shoulder and back to the notch, taking the whole year over it, and inside that turn the moon fills and empties, over and over, patiently, the way breathing goes on inside sleeping. Below her, in the settlement, somebody has put wood on the fire. She hears it before she sees anything. The small knock of it, and then nothing for a while, and then a thin smell of smoke coming up the slope to her, and then, when she looks down, a low flicker beginning to work at the edge of the ash, small and orange, throwing a little light on the ground and on the wall of the nearest house. She does not turn round. The ridge is going a deep blue-grey now, and the sky above it is opening, and the stars over the valley have thinned away to 2 or 3, and then to 1 low, and then that one goes as well. There is a step behind her on the frost. A child comes and sits down on the stone beside her, close in against her side for the warmth, and says nothing, because it is understood that on this stone at this hour there is not much said. The two of them sit and look at the same hills, and neither of them says anything about it. The child is at the age where the shape of the ridge is beginning to be learned. the notch, and the old tree, and the far shoulder, and where the movement of the light along it is beginning to be believed rather than only heard about, because it has now been seen a few times with our own eyes, and the seeing is different from the hearing. They sit. The cold comes up through the stone. The breath of the two of them goes out white and drifts sideways and thins away and goes out again. The child's hands are inside her sleeves. She is not entirely awake. She was warm a moment ago, in among the others, under the hides, and she came out because she was told to come out, and because she wanted to, and both of those are true at the same time. There is a long while in which nothing happens. That is most of what this is. The waiting is nearly the whole of it, and the child does not know that yet, and will know it, and will one day sit here herself in the cold, with somebody smaller beside her, and think nothing of the waiting at all. The sky goes on lifting, so slowly that it cannot be watched happening, only noticed afterward to have happened. There is no moment when it gets lighter. It is only that a while ago the hills could not be told from the sky, and now they can. Somewhere down in the valley a bird starts and stops, and the light comes. It comes first as a thinning behind the ridge, a place where the dark is not as thick as the dark beside it, then as a warmth low down, a color with no edge to it, spreading slowly along behind the hills. Then the sky above goes pale and paler, and the last of the blue goes out of it. And then there is a single bright point at one edge of the notch, hard and gold and very small, that widens and runs along a little and spills. The frost on the grass around the stone turns from grey to white. Their two shadows are thrown out long and blue behind them across the slope, longer than the two of them are, thrown right out over the grass and up the rise of the ground behind. And they move a little as the light lifts. The valley below stays dark for a while yet, holding the last of the night in it, before that too begins to fill. The woman lifts her hand and points, without saying anything, at the place along the ridge where the sun has come up. A little further along than yesterday. The child looks where she is pointing and looks for a long moment and remembers it, and that is all that happens. The sun comes up over a ridge, and somebody is watching, and somebody smaller is watching beside her, and the frost begins to go off the grass in the places where the light has reached. And below them the smoke stands up straight in the cold air, because there is no wind yet, and the day starts. It happens again the next morning, a little further along, and again a little further still. And most of the nights in between are quiet, and nothing happens on them at all. The sky is simply there, turning over, as it turns every night, and whoever is sitting under it is cold, and is patient, and sees nothing that is not exactly what was expected. Cloud comes in for a week, and there is nothing to see at all. Only grey, and then black, and then grey. Rain sets in and stays. A whole season goes by, in which the only thing learned is that everything is where it was. And then, once in a long while, on some ordinary night, among all the ordinary nights, there is something. A light where there was no light before. One of the slow-moving stars that has gone a little further than it went last time, or has turned, and is going back the way it came. A darkness taking a bite out of the moon, slowly over an hour, and then, just as slowly, giving it back. And whoever is sitting out under it that night remembers, and tells it, and it is told again, and it goes into the long telling with everything else. Nearly all of the work is the waiting, the looking up and seeing only what was there before. The watching is almost entirely made of nights on which nothing whatever happens, and that is what makes the few nights count, because a thing can only be strange to somebody who has seen the ordinary 1,000 times. And this is going on in the same slow way in a great many places at once. Far off, on the other side of hills that nobody in this valley has ever crossed, somebody else is sitting out in the cold and looking up at the same sky and learning a different set of hills. On flat land, where there is no ridge at all to mark anything against, somebody sets up a stone of their own and another stone beyond it, and stands behind them and lines them up with the place the sun comes out of, and comes back the next year to see. In a hot country, a watcher notes which stars have been swallowed in the glare around the sun at this time of year, and which have come back out of it. On an island, somebody lies on their back on sand that is still warm from the day, and watches a familiar group of stars pass over a particular headland, and knows the month by it. None of them can speak to each other. None of them will ever know that the others exist. But they are all doing the same thing, which is looking up and remembering, and looking up again the next year to see whether it happens the same way, and it does. And so it is passed on to whoever is sitting beside them, and that goes on for a very long time, longer than can really be held in the mind at all. Thousands of turnings of the seasons, and every one of them watched by somebody, in one place or another, on a stone, on sand, on the flat roof of a house. And almost every one of those people is gone now, without a mark of any kind left anywhere to say that they were ever there. And above all of them, the sky goes on turning, slowly in the way it has always turned. The same stars coming up in the same order, out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down on the other side, and coming up again the next night in the same places, unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice at all. The same slow attention is being paid all the while to things much closer to hand than the sky. It is the middle of a warm afternoon now, in a wood at the bottom of the same valley, and the light comes down through the leaves in pieces and moves about on the ground when the branches move. It is quiet in there, in the way that woods are quiet, which is not silent at all. There is the water somewhere off to the left. There is a wood pigeon a long way up, going over the same few notes and then stopping and then starting again. There are flies turning in a shaft of light where a tree has come down and let the sun in, going round and round in the same small column of air without ever leaving it. A woman is going along the edge of the trees with a basket held against her hip. She goes slowly. She stops often. She bends down and turns a leaf over with one finger and looks at the underside of it and lets it go, and straightens up and goes on a little further and stops again. She is looking for a particular leaf. She knows it by the shape of the edge, which is toothed, and by the grey of the underside, which is paler and softer than the top, and holds a fine down on it that can be felt with the ball of the thumb. She knows it by the way it grows, low and always in company with others of its own kind, so that finding one is finding 20. She knows the smell of it when a piece is broken between the fingers, sharp and green and a little bitter, and she knows the smell will stay on her hand for an hour afterward. And she knows it best of all by where it grows, which is here on this bank, under these trees, near the water, where the ground stays damp all summer. Not 30 steps away, on the dry rise, where the light comes down harder, there is another plant that looks very like it, and is not it, and she has known the difference since she was small. And she could not entirely say how. She takes what she needs and leaves the rest because it will be wanted again, and because it has always been done that way. The basket is old, and the weave of it has gone dark and smooth at the rim where her hand goes. She shifts it on her hip and goes on along the bank. Further along, there is a tree leaning out over the stream, with the water running under it, brown and shallow and quick over the stones, making a small steady noise that does not change. She wants the bark of it. She takes a flake of stone out of a fold of her clothing and works the edge of it under a strip and eases it away, and it comes off in a long piece, and the inside of it is pale and wet and cool against the fingers, and smells of the wood and the water together. If a piece of it is chewed, it is so bitter that the mouth pulls tight, and the eyes water, and the bitterness stays for a long while and cannot be got rid of. And the bitterness is a thing to be glad of, because the bitterness is how the right tree is known from the wrong one. And because when the bark is left to soak a long time in hot water, it makes a brown drink that carries that same bitterness into it, and somebody lying inside a house with a fever and aching in the legs and the back, will be a little easier for having drunk it. She does not know why it eases them. There is nothing in her way of thinking that requires her to know why. It eases them, and it has eased them before, and her mother's hands cut the same bark from trees like this one, standing in the same water, and her mother's mother before that, and that is enough. And it is all that anybody has. She puts the bark in the basket with the leaves. Further on there is a root she wants, and it is not the season for it, and she notes where it is standing, so that she can come back when the leaves have died down. And there is a flower she will not touch. It stands taller than the rest, at the edge of the clearing where the light comes in, on a single stem, with bells hanging down along one side of it, purple-brown, and freckled inside like a throat. She has known since she was small that it has to be treated with care. She has also known, for nearly as long, that it can steady a person whose heart is going unevenly in their chest when there is nothing else to be done. A very little of it, no more than a very little, prepared just so, and given slowly and watched, because a plant that can do that much has to be met with respect, and she was taught to give it the way you were taught to carry something full to the brim without hurry, and without letting your attention wander off it. She walks around it. There is no need for it today. This is the shape of what she carries. Not a list of cures, a long, patchy, hard-won inheritance of which plant, in which month, from which ground, in what amount, and for whom, and what it looks like when it is working, and what it looks like when it is not. And a great deal of it is wrong. Some of what she gives does nothing at all, and is remembered as a remedy, only because the person she gave it to happened to get better anyway, in the way that most people mostly get better. And the getting better was laid at the door of the leaf. Some of it does a little harm. Some of it was true of a plant that grew in the country her people came from, a long way off, and is not quite true of the one that grows here, which looks the same and is not the same. There is no way for her to sort the one from the other. She has her own eyes and her own life, and a handful of sick people in a year, and a thing that works 4 times in 5 looks exactly like a thing that works. And a thing that works once in 10 can look like a wonder if the once is remembered and the 9 are not. But some of it is right. Not all of it, and not most of it, but some, and the part that is right has been arrived at by nothing more than people paying attention over a very long time, giving the bark and watching, giving it again and watching again, across more lifetimes than anybody kept any count of, until the things that did nothing quietly dropped out of the telling, and the things that did something stayed in. Nobody planned that. Nobody was trying anything out. It happened the way a path across a field happens, because feet keep going the way the feet went before. The same close looking is turned on the body itself. She has set bones. She knows how a break in the forearm ought to be drawn straight and bound between 2 flat pieces of wood with the padding of cloth between, and how it will ache badly for a while and then less, and how the arm would be a little crooked afterward if it was not drawn straight enough at the start. She knows the way a fever goes, that it climbs toward evening, that there is often a bad night in the middle of it when the talking makes no sense and the sheets have to be changed, that the sweat which breaks toward morning is usually a good sign. She has sat through many births, and knows what a slow one looks like and what a wrong one looks like, and knows with a heaviness that never quite leaves her which of the wrong ones she can do anything about. And she knows better than anybody else in the settlement how much cannot be helped at all. For everything she can ease there are 3 or 4 she can only sit beside. There are fevers that do not turn however she tends them. There are hurts that are slow to mend, and some that do not mend at all. There is a great deal that lies beyond anything her hands can reach, and she has learned over the years where that edge is and how to sit quietly on the near side of it. She has learned all of that too, and it is knowledge of the same kind, come by in the same way, and it is the part of it that costs the most to carry. Knowing which of the things in front of her she has any power over, and knowing without being able to explain it to the faces watching her face that this one she does not, she comes back up the slope in the late afternoon with the basket on her hip. The shadows of the trees are long behind her now and lie across the path in bars. The smoke is going up from the settlement above, leaning a little, because there is some wind at this hour. That evening the bar goes into a pot with hot water and sits and steeps. The water goes brown, slowly, from the edges, inward, and the smell of it fills the small dark inside of the house, bitter and green and warm, mixed in with the smell of the fire. She sits beside it while it cools enough to give. Somebody who is aching drinks it and makes a face at the taste of it and lies back down on the other side of the fire. She stays sitting up. There is nothing else to do now, and this is the part of it that takes the longest, and it is the part nobody thinks of when they think of what she does. She sits with her back against the wall of the house and her knees drawn up, and she watches. The fire goes down. She puts something on it once, and it flares and throws the shapes of things up the wall for a moment and settles again to a low red. The smell of the bark is still in the room, bitter and green, mixed in now with the smoke. She listens to the breathing on the other side of the fire, and she is not listening for anything in particular, only for the shape of it. The way she has listened to a great many people breathe in a great many small dark rooms. There is a breathing that is working and a breathing that is not, and she knows the difference the way the mason knows a live sound from a dull one, and she could not tell anybody how. Outside, the ground has gone blue. Somewhere down the slope a dog turns round twice and lies down. The person under the hides shifts and turns over and pushes the covering down and pulls it back up and is quiet. And after a long while, their breathing changes and goes slow and even, and the small sound of the teeth going together with the cold stops, and she hears it change, and something in her lets go a little. She goes on sitting there a while longer to be sure. The fire ticks, the red goes deeper and smaller. Her own eyes are getting heavy, and she lets them because she can hear well enough with them shut, and because she will wake if the breathing changes, the way she has always woken. Outside the doorway the ground is going blue. Somewhere down the slope a dog is turning round and lying down. She puts a piece of hide across the doorway and goes to her own place and lies down. And above the roof, above the turf and the branches and the smoke coming up through the hole in it, the sky goes on turning. The sun stars coming up in the same order, out of the same edge of the world and crossing over and going down. The same stars and the same order and the same going down, and somewhere below them now a pot of bark steeping by a fire and someone sitting up beside it, keeping watch. All of it lives in people and nowhere else. There is no place to put it down, nothing to write it on, and no writing. Everything anybody knows about the sky and the plants and the body and the working of stone is held inside a certain number of heads, in a certain number of vases, and when one of those heads stops, whatever was in it that had not been handed to somebody else is simply gone that same evening, with nothing left in the place where it was. So it is handed over constantly. That is half of what the days are made of. It goes in speech, in the ordinary way, one person telling another while both of them are doing something else with their hands. It goes in the long stories told at night, by the fire, which are stories and are also folded down inside them. The shape of the coastline and the names of the headlands and where the water is on the way to the summer grazing. And it goes, most of all, in song. There is a fire, and it is late, and there are people sitting round it with their backs to the dark. Somebody is singing. It is not a performance. It is the way the evening goes, the way it goes most evenings, and the voice is not a remarkable voice, and the tune is one that everybody there has heard so many times that they do not hear it any more. The way a person does not hear the sea they live beside. The song is long. It is very long. It goes on through the order of the stars, which comes up first out of the edge of the world at this season, and which follows it, and which stands over which hill when the night is at its middle, and which is the one that is gone in the warm months, and comes back low and red before the cold. It has been going for a while now, and it is not near finishing. It could not be a list. A list would fall out of the head almost as fast as it went in, and there would be no way of telling later whether something had slipped out of it, or wandered into it, or turned itself round. But the song has a length that is fixed, and a rhythm that either fits or does not fit, and lines that chime against one another 2 by 2, so that a word which has gone missing leaves a hole that can be heard by everyone sitting there, and a word that does not belong sits wrong in the mouth, and the tune itself will not let the gap be passed over. If the singer stumbles, 4 people say the line. So the order of the stars is kept in a song, and the names of the plants are in a song, and the way the year goes and what is done in each part of it, and the long line of who came before whom, all of it sung at night, by the fire over and over, for as long as anybody can remember. There is a child sitting close to the fire with her chin on her knees. She is learning it, and it is hard. She has been made to say it back in pieces, a few lines at a time, and she has got them wrong and been given them again. She loses her place in the middle where 2 parts of it sound almost the same, and she cannot tell which one she is in. There is one long run near the end that she has never once got the whole way through. When she is tired, which she is now, the words go slippery and slide off each other. She thinks of it as something she is bad at. The fire ticks and settles. The singing goes on above her head. Her eyes are open, and then they are not open, and she catches herself and opens them, and looks at the red under the wood, and after a while they close again and stay closed. And she goes down into sleep with the song still going on over her, and she goes on hearing it for a while in the way that things are heard from underneath, and then she does not hear it. And it goes on being sung night after night, and she goes on learning it. And here is what happens to her over the years, so slowly that there is no day on which it happens. The hard part gets less hard. The place in the middle where she used to lose herself stops being a place at all, and she goes through it without noticing that she has gone through it. The long run near the end comes right one evening, and she does not remark on it, and it comes right the next time, and after that it is simply how the song goes. She stops needing to think ahead to the next line. The next line is already there when she arrives at it, and then, later than that, she stops remembering that she was ever taught it. There is no moment when the learning falls away. It thins. The evenings by the fire, where she got it wrong, and was given it again, and was tired and wanted to sleep, go soft and run together. And after a while there is nothing left of them at all. And the song is not something she was taught. It is simply something she knows, the way she knows the path to the river, the way she knows her own name, a thing that was always in her and was never put there. And one night she is the one singing it, with her own children round the fire, and one of them has her chin on her knees and is getting it wrong and is tired, and is going down into sleep with the words still going on above her. And the woman singing does not think as she sings of the effort it cost her. She could not find it now if she went looking. It is gone the way the frost goes off the grass in the morning, from the edges in, without anybody watching it go, and the ground underneath is unchanged, and the day carries on. It is the learning that goes, and not the thing learned, and it goes so quietly that nobody has ever caught it going. And below the songs, below anything that could be said out loud at all, there is another kind of knowing, which is in the hands. There is a man standing on a half-built wall in the middle of the afternoon with a hammer in his hand, deciding where to strike a stone. The sun is on the back of his neck. There is dust on his forearms and in the creases of his knuckles, and the wall is warm to the touch, and there is a smell of hot stone dust that is like nothing else, and that he has smelled every working day of his life. He has been among stones since he was a boy. He can look at a block and know, without any words for it, which way it will part and which way it will not. He can see that this one has a flaw running back into it and will come apart badly and take a corner off with it. He can see that this other one is sound the whole way through. He knows which face of it should be laid downward. He knows the exact place to set the point of the tool and the weight of the blow to give it, whether it wants a tap or wants the whole arm behind it. He knows all of that in his arms rather than his head, and if he were asked how he knew, he would not be able to say, and would think it a strange thing to be asked, and would answer, most likely, that it can be seen. It cannot be seen. He can see it because his hands have been finding it out for 40 years. He sets the tool and strikes, and the stone gives a sound, and he hears in the sound whether it is going the way it should. There is a dull sound, and there is a live sound. The live one means the stone is sound, and the crack is running true. He does not listen for it. He would not say that he listens at all. He simply knows before the piece has fallen away whether it is going to be right. He learned it standing next to a man who learned it standing next to a man, watching mostly for the first years, carrying, sweeping, being handed the small jobs and the poor stone that would not matter if it was spoiled, getting it wrong and being shown again and getting it wrong again over years until it went out of his eyes and down into his arms and stopped being anything he had to think about. And that is how it would leave him too. There is a young one at the foot of the wall now, who spends most of the day carrying and sweeping and being told to watch, and whose hands are just beginning to know the difference between a dull sound and a live one when the stone is struck. The afternoon goes on. The shadow of the wall creeps out across the ground toward the east and gets longer. The work stops when the light goes, and the wall stands there in the dusk, half-built, with the tools laid along the top of it, and the dust settling out of the air, and above it the sky goes on turning. The sun, stars coming up in the same order, and crossing over, and going down on the other side, unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice. And the same stars are lying on the water, far away, on a wide sea with no land in sight in any direction. They are down in the swells, as well as up in the sky, broken and running, and putting themselves back together. And there is a boat out on it in the dark, small with a sail down and the water going by along the hull. A man is lying on his back in the bottom of it, looking up. He has no chart, nothing to write with, and nothing written. No instrument of any kind. He has the stars and the water and what is in him. He knows which stars come up out of the sea at which point along the horizon, and in what order they come, one after another, along the same track through the night, so that when one has climbed too high to be any use, the next is already coming up behind it in the same place, low and clean above the water, and the bow can be held against that rising point hour after hour until morning. He knows the swells, not by looking at them because it is dark and there is little to see, but by the way the boat goes over them, which he feels along his back and through the timber under him. There is a long, deep swell running under the shorter ones, from a wind that is blowing somewhere else, a long way off, and it does not change when the local wind changes, and so it can be held to. He knows which way it is going. He has known since the afternoon. He knows which birds go far out and which do not, and which of them are heading home at dusk, and in which direction, and how far they will go before they get there. He knows that a certain shape of cloud, standing still while the others move, sits over land that cannot be seen. All of that is inside him, every part of it, nowhere else. He was taught it lying in the bottom of a boat exactly like this one, beside an older man, on nights exactly like this one, being made to name the stars as they came out of the water until he could not get it wrong, and being taken out again and again and again until the sea stopped being a blankness and became a thing with directions in it. He does not think about any of this now. He is lying in the bottom of a boat looking up, and the water is going by along the hull with a sound that has been the same for hours, and it is the middle of the night, and there is a long way still to go. The boat lifts and settles and lifts. There is a rhythm to it that has nothing to do with him. The long swell comes under the bow and the bow goes up, and there is a moment at the top of it where nothing is happening at all, and then the bow comes down and the water talks along the side. and then it is quiet for a moment, and then the next one comes. He has been on this water since he was a boy, and he does not notice the rhythm any more than he notices his own breathing, and it goes on under him all night, lifting and settling and lifting. And it will go on after he is asleep, because he will sleep for a while in the bottom of the boat with somebody else holding the bow against the rising point, and he will wake when the star has climbed too high, and take it again and hold it against the next one, and the stars go over, and the boat lifts and settles and lifts. And the potter in the shade of a doorway a long way inland knows how much water the clay wants today, and knows that it wants a little less than it wanted yesterday, because the weather has turned. And she knows it from the drag of it under her palms and from nowhere else. And the smith knows the color iron goes before it can be worked, that dark red is not enough and bright yellow is too much, and that is why the shed is kept dim, so that the color can be red. And the one who tans the hides, and the one who lays the roof, and the one who sets the traps in the shallow water where the fish come in on the tide, each of them carries the same kind of thing, exact, particular, worked out slowly, held in the body, passed on only by standing next to somebody for years. It is all real, and it is often extremely precise, and it is fragile in a way that is easy to miss, because it can only be carried by living people. It can only ever be as large as a living person, and it can only travel as far as a person can travel. It cannot be added up. The mason's 40 years of hands cannot be put together with another mason's 40 years in the next valley, because there is nowhere to put them where they might meet, and it does not survive a bad year. A sickness comes through, or a winter goes on too long, or the people are driven off and scattered. And among the ones who do not come through it, there is an old woman who was the last who knew the whole of the long song with the star order in it, and a man who could feel the second swell under the first, and a healer who knew which of two plants that look alike is the one that steadies a heart. There is no copy anywhere. Nobody notices on the day. It is found out later, slowly, in the years after, when somebody needs it and reaches for it, and there is nothing there. That happened over and over, in every part of the world, for tens of thousands of years, and almost all of what went that way went without any record that it had ever existed at all. And above the water, and above the wall, and above the settlement on the slope, the sky goes on turning, the same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over, and going down, unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice. And then, in a few places, along the sides of certain great rivers, something begins that does not look like anything at the time. The settlements along those rivers have grown, over a very long while, from a scatter of houses on a slope into something much larger, with walls of mud brick and narrow lanes between them that hold the heat, and storehouses and gardens outside, and a great deal of grain going in and out through the same few doorways every day. It is hot. It is the hottest part of the afternoon, and most things have stopped moving. A man is sitting on the step of a doorway in the shade, with a lump of wet clay in his hand. He works it flat against his palm, turning it, pressing with the heel of his hand, until it is a small tablet about the size of that hand, and he smooths the face of it with his thumb, once and again, until there is nothing on it. It is grey. It is cool, which is the best thing about the work at this hour, cool in the way that only wet clay is cool, and it holds that coolness against his palm for a while and then begins to lose it. It is slightly sticky. There is dried clay in the lines of his knuckles and pale grey dust on the backs of his hands, where the last one is flaked off. It smells of the river, damp earth, and a little green, and underneath that the warm, dry smell of the mud brick behind him that has been in the sun since morning. He rests the tablet on his knee and takes up a length of cut reed with a wedge shaped at the end of it. The reed is light. It is worn smooth where his fingers go and slightly darker there. He turns it round once without thinking about it, the way a person turns a thing in their hand, and he presses the end into the surface. It goes in with a very small sound, hardly a sound at all, a soft give, a press, a lift, and there is a mark. He turns the reed a little and presses again in a different direction, and there is another mark beside the first. Out beyond the doorway in the white light, the grain is coming in from the fields on the backs of donkeys, in baskets, and being tipped out and leveled off and carried in through the store door. And there is dust standing in the air over all of it, and men calling to each other, and the animals shifting and stamping. He does not look up much. He presses his small wedges into the clay, group by group, in rows across the face of the tablet, and each group is an amount, and each amount belongs to a name. And the whole long, hot afternoon of dust and animals and shouting goes into the clay in silence, one mark at a time, while he sits in the shade, with the coolness of it going out against his palm. When the face is full, he turns the tablet over and presses a last row along the back. Then he sets it on a shelf beside the doorway, in the sun to dry. It sits there through the rest of the afternoon. The grey goes pale, the wet shine comes off it, the edges go first and then the middle, and by evening it has hardened and gone the colour of the wall behind it, and the marks in it have stopped being soft impressions and become simply the way that piece of clay is shaped. It is dull work. It has always been dull work. Nobody sitting in that doorway was under any impression of doing anything at all. But the tablet is stacked with others in a room where the light comes in high through a small opening near the roof, and where the air is dry and smells of dust and old earth, and where nothing moves except the dust turning slowly over and the shaft of light coming down, and another is stacked on it the next day, and another the day after that. They go up in short piles along the wall, and the piles get to a certain height and a new one is begun beside it, and the row of piles goes further along the wall and then along the next wall. It happens at about the pace that dawn moves along a ridge. That is to say, it does not happen at all, on any day that anybody could point to. Nobody comes into the room and finds it changed. The room is the same room with the same high light and the same smell, and there are simply a few more tablets in it than there were, and a person who worked there all their life would have to be told that there had ever been fewer. But the tablets do not forget, which is the only thing about them that turns out to matter, and they are patient in a way that nothing before them had ever been, because the first thing the marks are used for after the grain is the sky. There is a watcher on a flat roof in that same city at night, and he is doing what watchers have always done, which is looking up and remembering. The roof is still warm under him from the day. Below, the lanes have gone quiet, and there is a smell of smoke and animals and cooling brick, and somewhere a long way off, a dog. He watches until it is late, and then in the morning he goes down and presses it into clay. The night, and what stood where, and which of the wandering ones had shifted, and by how much, and whether anything had come into the sky that was not there before. And then he does it again the next night, and the next, and so does the man who takes his place when he is gone, and the one after him, and the one after that, none of whom ever met the first, and all of whom sit on the same roof, and look at the same sky, and go down in the morning, and press it into clay. And the tablets pile up in the room along the wall, at the pace that dawn moves along a ridge. 400 years of nights, kept by men who never met each other, lying in a dry room in the dark, saying exactly what they said on the morning they were written, and going on saying it. And in 400 years of nights, things begin to show themselves that no single life is long enough to see. There are rhythms up there that take decades to come round, and a watcher who lives 60 years might see one and never know it was a rhythm at all. There are slow drifts that only appear when a night from long ago can be set beside a night from now, and when the darkenings of the moon are all laid down in order, one under another, going back generation upon generation, the shape of their returning begins to come up out of the list on its own. the way a path comes up out of a field, not because anybody drew it, but because it has been walked so many times. So the watchers begin to be able to say, before it happens, what the sky is going to do. And in the places where such things are kept, rooms are given over to holding them, and then more rooms, and then whole houses of tablets and later of scrolls kept in order, in the dark, in the dry, with somebody whose whole work is to know where things are and to take down the ones that are wearing thin and copy them out again by hand, so that the words go on into a new one when the old one goes. The copying is quiet work and slow, and nobody remembers the copiers. But so long as somebody keeps copying, the words do not die with the clay. And the man in the doorway knows nothing about any of that. He is counting grain. The afternoon is hot, and his tablet is drying on the shelf beside him in the sun. And when the light goes, he will get up and go home. And above the roof and above the room of tablets, and above the river going by slow and brown in the dark, the sky goes on turning. The same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world and crossing over and going down. The sung stars and the same order and the same going down, and now in a dry room below, the marks of them pressed into clay, saying tomorrow exactly what they say tonight. Alongside the marks in the clay, and older than them, there is counting. It begins somewhere very far back, in a way that nobody saw happen and nobody wrote down, with somebody setting one thing against another thing. A piece of bone and a notch cut into it for each animal that goes out in the morning. The bone goes in a fold of cloth or hangs on a cord and is worn all day and warms against the body. And in the evening, when the animals come back in through the gap in the thorn, a thumb goes along the notches, one for each, feeling for the edge of the next. If the thumb comes to the end of the notches while there are still animals coming in, something is wrong. If it comes to the end of the animals while there are still notches under the thumb, something is wrong the other way, and somebody takes a stick and goes back up the hill in the last of the light to look. The notches are not animals. That is the strange part of it, and it took a very long time. They are not animals, and they are not days, and they are not baskets of grain, and yet the same row of them will do for any of those, and for anything at all that can be set down one beside another and gone along with a thumb. Once counting has come away from the things being counted, it can be carried anywhere and set against anything. And it goes on ahead of everything else in this story, like water finding its way down a slope before the rest of the rain arrives. And in the river valleys, the counting of ground matters more than in most places because of the flood. Every year the water comes up over the fields. It comes up slowly over weeks, brown and heavy and full of silt. And it spreads out flat across the whole low country, until there is nothing to be seen from the edge of the town but a brown sheet with the tops of a few trees standing in it and the sky lying on it upside down. It is what makes the ground there worth anything at all, and it is a nuisance of a particular kind, because when the water goes down again, the fields are gone. The low banks that mark them are silted over and smooth. The little heaps of stones are shifted or buried or carried off. The whole flat country is one brown surface, drying and cracking in the sun, and underneath it, invisible, are the boundaries of several hundred families' land. And every one of those families has a very clear opinion about where those boundaries were. So people go out over the mud with cord. It is knotted at fixed intervals along its length, and it is stretched between marks the water could not move, a stone set deep, a corner of a wall, a post driven into hard ground above the flood line. And it is laid out across the field and taken up and laid out again beyond where it ended, and the lengths are counted off, and the corners are found, and the boundaries are put back where they were. The mud is drying, and it takes a footprint. The men walking it have it up to their ankles and dried grey to the knee. The cord is wet and heavy at the start of the morning, and lighter by afternoon, and it has to be pulled properly taut, or the count comes out wrong. And there is a way of pulling it that the older ones have and the younger ones are learning, where a field is not a plain square, It is cut in the mind into shapes that can be handled, and the pieces are put together. Where a true corner is wanted, a loop of cord with knots at set places along it is pulled out into a triangle and held, and the corner it makes comes out square every time and is square in the same way every year, and is done exactly so by people who have no interest whatever in why it should be square, and a great deal of interest in getting the crop in before the heat. And the water comes up again the next year, and the fields go under, and the mud dries, and the cord comes out again. That goes on for centuries, long enough that the handling of lines and corners and areas becomes a thing in itself, done by people who are good at it, and taught to people who will be good at it. And number turns up in places nobody was looking for it. There is a boy sitting on a step in the evening with a string stretched over a hollow board across his knees. He plucks it, and it gives a note, and the note goes on for a while and dies away, and the board holds the sound and lets it out, and he can feel it faintly in his knees. He puts a finger down halfway along the string and plucks it again, and it gives a note that is the same note, and is not the same note, standing higher, sitting so exactly under the first one that the two together sound almost like one sound, with a thickness in it. He moves his finger a little off that place and plucks, and it is a mess, and something in him winces at it. He moves it back, and it is beautiful again. He does it several times, off and back, ugly and right. And then he goes looking along the string for the other places where it comes right, and there are only a few of them, and they are always in the same places, spaced along the string in a plain and settled way, so that once the ear has found them, it knows where to reach for them, and everywhere in between is a mess, and only those few places are sweet. There is no reason the ear should care where a finger falls on a piece of gut, but it does, and it always has, and it does so on every string that anybody ever stretched, in every country. And it is the sort of thing that keeps a person sitting on a step in the dark for an hour, with a string in their hands, plucking it and stopping it and plucking it again, long after they have been called in. A number laid against patient watching, there's things that seem out of all proportion to what it is made of. It is the middle of the day in a hot city on a river delta, at the time of year when the sun stands highest. There is a stick pushed upright into dusty ground in a courtyard, and a man is looking at it. The ground is pale and dry and gives off heat that can be felt on the face. Everything is very bright and very still, and the shade under the wall on the far side is so dark by contrast that nothing in it can be made out. There is no sound but a bird somewhere and the wind moving something on a roof. The shadow of the stick lies on the ground beside it, short and dark and narrow. Very short. Shorter than it will be at any other hour of any other day in the year. But it is there. He crouches down beside it and looks at it. He puts a finger at the tip of it and lifts the finger away. And far off to the south of that courtyard, in another town, a long way up the river, there is a deep well cut down into the rock. He has never seen it. He has been told about it. Once a year, at this same time of year, at this same hour, the sun comes down that shaft so straight that the light goes the whole way to the bottom and lies there on the water. And the person leaning over the edge with their hands on the cool stone can look down and see the water lit and see no shadow at all on the wall of the well, not on any side. And there is nothing between them and the light. The stone under their hands is cool. It is the only cool thing anywhere on that day. The air coming up out of the shaft is cool as well, and damp, and smells of wet rock, and the town above is white and blinding and full of heat. And down there at the bottom of the shaft is a round, bright coin of water with the sun standing on it. 2 places. The same hour of the same day. In one of them, there is no shadow anywhere. In the other, there is a short dark line lying on hot dust beside an upright stick, with a man crouched over it, looking. He sits with it a long while. Then he goes inside, into a room of scrolls where the light comes in high and it is dim and dry, and he stays there for some time with what he knows, how far it is along the road to that town, which has been paced out by men who walk for a living, and the length of a shadow at noon in a courtyard. And out of those two things, in a room on an afternoon, he arrives at the size of the world. Nobody could check it, nobody could go and see. He never went to the well and never leaned over it and never put his hands on that cool stone. And the number he came to was very close to right, closer than anybody had any business getting. And it sat in a room with scrolls for a long time afterward, while the sun went on standing over the courtyard once a year, and the shadow of the stick went on being short. That is what number and measure add to the old watching of the world. What used to be noticed can now be written. What used to be described can now be given as an amount. And amounts can be laid side by side and compared and put together across centuries and across countries by people who never met. And out of that laying together come things that no single pair of eyes was ever going to see. And above the courtyard and above the well and above the flat brown water lying over the fields, the sky goes on turning. The sun stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world and crossing over and going down. The same stars and the same order and the same going down, and now a shadow measured against them and a road and the size of the whole thing worked out in a quiet room. And all the while running along underneath the useful things there is another kind of wandering going on, which is no use to anybody at all. It happens at the ends of days, mostly, and it happens first, most likely, to the very people who have been working with their hands all day. The mason at dusk, with his hand resting flat on the top of the wall, he has spent the day building, feeling the warmth go slowly out of the stone, finds himself wondering, only for a moment, before he is called in to eat, why the one stone parts so cleanly under the tool and the other, that looks the same, shatters into nothing. What is inside it? What it would be if it could be followed down past the point where the tool can go. The healer, turning a leaf between her fingers, wonders why the bitter one brings a fever down, and the one growing beside it, that looks so like it, does nothing at all, or worse, why the bitterness should do anything. What it is doing underneath that she cannot see. The questions come like that, in the middle of the ordinary work, or at the end of it, when the hands are still busy or have only just stopped, and there is nothing pressing, and somebody is sitting on a step, or by water, or lying out on a flat roof in the warm part of the year with their hands behind their head, and the question arrives and has nothing whatever to do with the harvest, not how to plant, or how to heal, or how to build. What the world is underneath, what things are actually made of, if the making could be followed far enough down, whether there is some one thing at the bottom of everything, water or air or fire or something with no name at all, that has only been folded and folded into all these different shapes, whether things go on dividing forever, or whether there is a last small piece that cannot be halved again. There were people, a very long time ago, in more than one part of the world, who sat with that last question for years and came out in the same place, that the cutting, kept up far enough, would come at last to grains too small to see and too small to cut, and that everything there is the water and the stone and the smoke and the hand doing the cutting is those grains, arranged differently, and nothing else. They had no way whatever to look, nothing that could show them such a thing, and nothing that could tell them whether they were right or wrong. They had come to it by sitting still and turning it over in a room or under a tree or walking, and there it stayed for a very long time, an idea with nothing underneath to hold it up, told and retold, argued over, half believed, laid aside and taken up again by somebody else, 100 years later, who had never heard of the first one. They asked about change too, which is the other thing that will not leave a person alone once it has got in. Everything is changing all the time. The fire takes the log and there is no log, and there is warmth, and there is a little ash, and the ash weighs almost nothing. The child that could be carried on one arm is a grown man with grey coming into his beard. The iron gate that was new goes brown and flakes and thins, and one winter it is not worth mending. Water stands in a pot in the morning, and by evening it is gone, and it has gone nowhere that anybody can point to. The river is never once the same water, and is always the same river. And people asked, reasonably enough, whether anything at all stays itself underneath all of that, whether the changing is the real thing and the staying is the illusion, or whether it is the other way about. None of this was any use. Knowing what the world is made of at the bottom will not raise a crop, and will not bring a fever down, and will not make a wall stand up straight. Anybody who spent a long evening on it was spending an evening that could have gone on something that fed somebody. And it was done anyway, in every age, in every place, by people who had no expectation of anything coming of it, because the question was there and would not go away, and because the evening was warm. And the work was done, and there was nothing else that had to be attended to just then. It went on like that for a very long time. Centuries of asking, and no way at all to settle any of it. Ideas handed down and argued over, and refined and handed down again, some of them close to right, and some of them very far from it, and no means of telling one from the other. Because the only tools for the work were thinking carefully and arguing well, and thinking carefully and arguing well have never yet been able to say what the world is actually like. The question simply sat there, the way a stone sits in a field. Somebody picks it up and turns it over and puts it down again, and goes away and dies, and a long time later somebody else picks up the same stone. And above them, above the roof and the step and the tree, the sky goes on turning, the same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down. Unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice, a person is born with a certain reach, and it is not very far. The eye sees only so much, and only so finely, and cannot hold two brightnesses beside one another, and say by how much the one goes beyond the other. The ear does a little better, and not much. The hand can tell warm from cold and heavy from light, and cannot tell warm from slightly warmer. And memory, which is the poorest of them, goes on quietly altering things overnight in its own favor, and never mentions that it has done so. So people began, very slowly, to make things that reached a little further than they did, and the plainest of them is a stick pushed upright into the ground. On its own it does nothing at all. It is a stick standing in the dirt, and there is nothing in it, and the person could walk past it every day for a year and think nothing about it. But the sun goes over it, and the shadow of it swings round with the sun, all day long in the early part of the morning, lying right out across the ground toward the west, drawing in and shortening through the middle of the day, going round as it shortens, coming to its shortest, and then lengthening again through the afternoon and swinging on round toward the east, longer, and then going soft at the edges as the light goes, and then not being there at all. And if somebody sets a small stone at the tip of the shadow now, and comes back a while later and sets another stone where the tip has got to, and comes back again and sets another, and does the same tomorrow, and marks the place the shadow reaches when it is at its very shortest, which is the same place every day, and a different length every day, and comes out and does that through a whole season, and then through a whole year, with the shortest shadow drawing slowly in toward the stick through half the year and slowly back out through the other half. Then that stick, watched long enough, will tell the hour of the day, and it will tell the season of the year, and it will tell which way is north, because the shortest shadow lies along the same line every day of every year, and always has, and always will. There is nothing in the stick. Everything is in the watching. But once the watching has been done, and the stones have been set out on the ground where the shadow reached, the stick goes on telling anybody who comes along afterward and never watched anything. Water gives another. There is a vessel with a small hole low in the side of it, and it is filled, and the water runs out through the hole, drop after drop, at a rate that hardly changes, and the level inside goes down slowly and steadily. And if there are lines scratched on the inside of the vessel, Then the hour can be read off the falling water by putting a finger in and finding where the surface has got to. And this one goes on working at night. It works under cloud. It works in a room with no window in it. It works right through a long winter night from dusk until dawn, when the sun is nowhere at all and there is no shadow anywhere to be had. And it works in exactly the same way, drop after drop, all night, in the dark. In the corner of a room where somebody is asleep, the measuring of time comes loose from the sky and can be carried indoors and set down beside a bed. Somewhere else, somebody is holding up a curved piece of clear crystal and turning it slowly in the light. Held one way, it gathers the sun into a single small hot point, and the point can be laid on a dry leaf and held there, and after a while a brown mark comes up on the leaf and a thread of smoke lifts off it. Held another way and looked through, it makes small things large. The weave of a cloth stands up as thick as rope. The leg of a fly has hairs on it. The grain in a piece of wood goes deep and complicated, with things happening in it that were never suspected. It is a toy, more or less, a curiosity to be passed round and exclaimed over and put back in its cloth. Nobody holding one of those first pieces of crystal in the light of a window, tilting it, moving it nearer to the eye and further away, could have had the least idea that glass of that kind, ground finer, and set at the two ends of a tube, would one day show the mountains standing along the edge of the moon, or the small crowded living things swarming unseen in a single drop of water taken from a pond. All of that is very far off, and there is no hurry about it. For now, it is a curved piece of glass, and somebody looking through it and turning it and wondering why the world goes strange. And the watchers of the sky make instruments too, and it is there that the greatest care goes. Rings of bronze, cast and cut and filed, and graded circles with marks along them, mounted heavily so that they will not shift, and sighted along, so that a star can be caught in the sight and its height above the horizon read off against the marks. Because the eye can say that a star is high, and cannot say how high, and a thing that cannot be said as an amount cannot be written down. And a thing that cannot be written down cannot be laid beside a measurement taken by somebody else in another country 100 years ago by a man who is long dead and was never met. So the bronze is cast and cut and mounted level and checked again. And the watching goes on with numbers coming out of it now, and the numbers go into the record, and the record goes on growing after the watchers are gone. Every one of these is the same sort of thing. Not a way of knowing that a person could never have had. Only a way of taking the ordinary attention of an ordinary person and giving it a longer arm and a finer edge, so that it reaches a little past what a body was born able to reach, and so that what it finds can be set down in a form that will outlast the one who found it. A stick in the ground, a vessel with a hole in it, a piece of glass, a ring of bronze. And above all of them, the sky goes on turning, the same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down. The same stars, and the same order, and the same going down, and now a ring of bronze turned up toward them in the dark, catching one of them in its sight and holding it, and reading it off against the marks. For most of that long time, the world was taken as it came. The sky was watched wherever the sky happened to be doing something. The plants were learned where the plants happened to grow. Nobody arranged anything. The world went on being itself, and people looked at it and thought about what they had seen, and the looking was patient and the thinking was careful, and nothing was ever asked a direct question. And then slowly, and in scattered places, and over a long stretch of centuries, people began setting things up on purpose. There is a room with the shutters closed against a bright afternoon. It is nearly dark inside, and warm and dusty, and the noise of the street outside comes in muffled and far away, as though it belonged to somewhere else. In one of the shutters, a small round hole has been cut, and through the hole comes a single narrow beam of sunlight, hard-edged, going across the room at a slant from high on one side down to the wall on the other. And the dust turns over slowly inside it, drifting and lifting and settling and turning over again, lit and then not lit as it wanders out of the beam and back into it. Everything else in the room is dim. The beam is the only bright thing in it, and where it lands on the far wall, there is a small round patch of white on the plaster. A man puts a wedge of glass into the beam, and the small round patch on the wall stretches out sideways and opens into a band of color laid out in order along the plaster, red at the one end going through into blue at the other, soft where the colors meet. Quite unmistakable, thrown across a wall in a dark room in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. He looks at it for a long while. Then he takes the glass out of the beam and the wall goes back to a small white circle. Then he puts it in again and the colors come back. He does that several times, standing there in the dark with the dust turning over in the light beside him. Out and the white circle. In and the band of color. Out and in. That is the new thing, and it is not the colors. The colors had been seen before in water and in rain and in the edge of a piece of glass held up at a window by everybody, always. The new thing is that the room was made this way on purpose and can be made again. Tomorrow, in the same house, in the same hour with the same shutter closed and the same beam and the same wedge of glass and the same band of color lying along the same wall. And in another house, in another town, by somebody who has only ever been told about it, and who closes their own shutter, and cuts their own hole, and stands in their own dark room with the dust turning in the light, and holds up their own piece of glass, and sees the same band of color come out on their own plaster. And in another room, further off, in another country where the language is different, and the afternoon is at a different hour, and the wall is a different color under the plaster, and in another, a great many small dark rooms, in a great many towns, with the shutters closed against the afternoon and one narrow beam coming in through a hole, and the dust turning over slowly in the light of it, and the band of color lying along the wall. And in some of the rooms it does not come out the same, and then there are letters, and eventually somebody notices that the glass was of a different kind, or the hole was cut too wide, or the wall was not far enough off. Either way, it has gone out of any one person's hands, because it no longer matters very much who says it. It stops mattering that a man is old, or learned, or holds a position, or writes beautifully, or is quoted with great respect by everybody, or has been believed for 800 years. The shutter can be closed, and the hole cut, and the glass held up by anybody at all, in any room, in any country, and if the colors do not come, they do not come. That took a very long time to settle in, and it was resisted, and it was never complete anywhere. But it spread slowly, unevenly, in fits, over generations, in a few places at first, and then in more, until it was simply the way the work was done. Set it up so it can be set up again, write down exactly how, and let anybody who doubts it go into a dark room of their own and see. And above the rooms, above all the closed shutters and all the slow dust turning in all the narrow beams of light, the sky goes on turning. The sun, stars coming up in the same order, out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down. The same stars and the same order and the same going down, and now the light of them and of the sun behind them, let in through a hole in a shutter and broken open along a wall. And the telling goes out across the world the way the birds go. In the autumn they come over high up in their long ragged blinds, calling so far above the valley that they are only sound and small marks moving. And they are gone all winter. And in the spring the lines come back over the same valley in the other direction, and somebody standing in a field stops and looks up at them. The letters go like that, written by hand, at night, by one lamp, with the pen going scratch across the paper in a quiet room and stopping, and going again, and the ink drying slower than the hand would like, so that a bar of it is laid along the edge to keep the wet line from smearing, and then folded, while the little wax is held to the flame until it softens and runs, and a drop of it set down and pressed, warm, and going hard as it cools, and carried out into the dark by whoever happens to be going that way, over water, over a pass, along a road, taking weeks, taking a season, sometimes never arriving at all. A man in one country writing to a man in another whom he has never seen and never will, setting down what he closed his shutter for and what came out on his wall, in enough detail that it can be done again, and asking what happens when it is tried there. Letters crossing on the road without knowing it. Letters answered years late, by which time the one who asked has moved, or changed his mind, or died. Letters copied out by somebody who was only passing them on, and given to a fourth person who was never written to at all. And the answers come back over the same long distances, the way the lines of birds come back over the same valley, and somebody standing at a window a long way off breaks the hard little disc of wax, and unfolds the paper, and it crackles as it opens, once, in a silent room, and they hold it to the light, and read what somebody they will never meet saw on a wall in a dark room a season ago. And there are pages, printing, going out and out. They gather like fog in a valley, not arriving exactly, simply thickening. There is a little of it in the low ground, in the evening, lying in the hollows, and it is nothing, and it is easy to see across, and then it is deeper, and the far side of the valley has gone. And then it is up over the trees and standing among them, and it is quiet in it, and cold, and a person walking in it can see only a little way in any direction, and there is more of it every year. It thickens for a long time, and the room of tablets that used to be one dry room with the light coming in high and the dust turning over becomes a house of them, and the house becomes several houses. And then it is a whole quarter of a city where every door opens on shelves, and somebody walking through with a lamp cannot go into all of the rooms, cannot even go along all of the streets, and stops in one room, and stays there. So people begin to let things go, not by any decision, and not all at once, and never quite on purpose. One gives a whole life to the stars, and stops keeping up with the plants, and after 20 years could not follow the arguing about the plants at all. Another goes down among the plants and lets the stars go entirely and does not miss them. Another spends 40 years on rocks, and then on one kind of rock, and then on one question about that kind of rock, which is enough to fill the 40 years and more. Each of them knows a great deal more about their own small ground than any of the old, wide-ranging people ever did, and each of them knows a great deal less about everything else. And both of those are the same thing happening, the way the fog thickening is the same thing as the far side of the valley going out of sight. And the people doing this work were still called what they had long been called, in the old broad phrase that had covered anybody at all who thought about the world. But that phrase had been cut for a different kind of person, one who took the whole world for a subject and could hold a fair share of everything that was known about all of it. And it fitted these new ones about the way an old coat fits a grown man. They had their own instruments, and their own long training, and their own gatherings, and their own pages going out. And there was still no ordinary word for them. The word, when it came quietly, and nobody thought much of it at the time. Somebody in a room, turning the difficulty over, arrived at it by the plainest sort of comparison there is. A person who worked in art was an artist, so a person who worked in these things might perhaps be a scientist. That was the whole of it. No ceremony, no announcement. The small suggestion, made in passing, of the kind that is made 100 times a year, and comes to nothing at all. And it very nearly came to nothing. It was thought clumsy at first, and ugly in the mouth, and unnecessary, and for a good while hardly anybody used it, and those who did were sometimes apologetic about it. But it went the way a seed goes. Off the head of the grass in the autumn, out on the wind, over a wall, over a road, down into ground that nobody chose and nobody prepared, lying there through the winter under the frost, doing nothing. and coming up in the spring in a field where there had been none of it before, and the next year in 3 fields, and the year after that all along the bank of the road for a mile, so thick that nobody can remember the road without it, from one printed page onto another, from a page into somebody's mouth, from a mouth into a letter, and out of the letter into an argument, and out of the argument into ordinary speech, passed hand to hand, the way the star songs were passed hand to hand by the fire, and the way the sound of good stone was passed from the old mason's hands into the young ones, and worn a little smoother each time it changed hands, until all the strangeness had gone out of it, and it was simply the word, the ordinary word, the one that had obviously always been there. It had not always been there. It arrived very near the end, when nearly all of this was already over, and behind it, going back and back and back, is everything that had no name at all. The upright stick in the dust, with its shadow swinging round through the day, the cord knotted at fixed places, pulled tight across drying mud, the pale strip of bark lying in the bottom of a basket, the tablet of wet clay hardening on a shelf in the sun, the rings of bronze turned toward a star and held, the narrow beam of light in a shuttered room with the dust going round and round inside it, and behind those, the people, who were the part that does not keep. The figures of this story begin to go quiet now, one at a time, in the order that they came. The woman on the cold stone at the edge of the settlement is still there for a moment. The hide is round her shoulders, and the frost is holding the shape of her feet in the grass, and the light has come up a little further along the ridge than it came yesterday, and there is a child beside her who is learning the shape of the hills. She lifts her hand and points and does not say anything, and then the morning goes on, and the frost begins to come off the grass where the light has reached, and she gets up off the stone and goes back down the slope toward the smoke and does not come into the story again. The healer goes along the bank, under the trees with the basket against her hip, slower now, stopping often, turning a leaf over with one finger and letting it go. She takes what she needs and leaves the rest, and she does not touch the tall flower with the bells hanging down along one side of it. And she goes on round the edge of the clearing and in among the trees where the light comes down in pieces and the wood closes behind her. And the small, steady noise of the water over the stones goes on after she is gone. The child by the fire with her chin on her knees falls asleep with the song going on above her, and is a woman singing it with her own children round the fire, and cannot find, when she looks for it, any of the evenings in which she learned it. And the fire goes down to a bed of soft red ash with a grey skin across it, and the singing stops, and the people go in. The mason sets his hand flat on the top of the wall and leaves it there a moment, feeling the warmth the stone has kept out of the afternoon. The tools are laid along the top in a row. The dust is settling out of the air. The young one who was carrying and sweeping all day has gone down to the water to wash his arms, and the wall stands there in the dusk, half-built, and goes on standing after him. The navigator lies in the bottom of the boat with the whole turning sky held quietly in his head. The boat lifts and settles and lifts. The water goes by along the hull. He is holding the bow against a point on the horizon where a star has not yet come up, and it will come up in a while in the place where it always comes up, and he will hold to it until morning. And the boat goes on out across the dark water, and the wake closes over behind it, and there is nothing to show that anything passed. The potter covers the clay with a damp cloth for the night. The smith lets the fire go down, and the colour goes out of the iron, from yellow through orange into red, and then into a dull red that can only be seen if the shed is dark, and then into nothing at all, and it is only a bar of iron lying on the anvil in the dark, cooling. The man in the doorway presses a last row of small wedges into the clay and turns the tablet over and sets it on the shelf. He gets up. His knees are stiff from the step. He goes out into the evening, into the lane that is finally cooling, and the room behind him is left with the light coming in high through the small opening near the roof, and the dust turning over slowly in it, and the smell of dry earth, and the piles of tablets standing along the wall in the half-dark. The boy on the step puts the string down across his knees and stops plucking it. He has been called in twice. He goes in. The man in the hot courtyard crouches beside the stick a while longer, looking at the short dark line beside it, and then stands and goes into the room of scrolls, out of the glare, into the dim and the dry. And far off to the south, the sun goes off the water at the bottom of the well, and the round, bright coin down there goes dark, and the cool air keeps coming up out of the shaft the way it does all day and all night and always has. And the man in the shuttered room takes the wedge of glass out of the beam for the last time. The band of colour goes off the wall. There is only the small white circle. And then the sun moves round off the hole in the shutter, and the beam goes red, and thins, and slides slowly up the wall, and off the edge of it, and there is no beam. And the dust that was turning over in it is still turning over in the dark, where nobody can see it. Their names are gone. Almost every one of them. Not lost in the way a thing is lost that was somewhere and got mislaid. Never set down in the first place. No mark of any kind, anywhere, to say that these particular people stood where they stood and looked at what they looked at. The settlements come down. The turf roofs fall in, slowly, over years, a little more each winter, and the rain gets into the earth walls and takes them down, and grass grows over the low lines where the walls were, and after a long while it is only a slight unevenness in a field which a person walking across it would not notice, and does not notice, and goes on over. The clay tablets crack, or are broken up, or go back into the mud they came out of. The songs with the order of the stars in them are sung by fewer and fewer people, and then by a few, and then by one, and the last time each one is sung, nobody in the room knows that it is the last time. It is an ordinary evening, the fire is going down, somebody sings and stops and puts a piece of wood on, and after a while everybody goes in. The boats rot in the shallows with the water going in and out of them. The wells fill in, the bronze rings are melted down for something else, and the marks filed along the edge of them go with the rest of it into the crucible, and come out as something with no marks on it at all. And still, out of all of that going, a little was handed on. Not much, against what was lost, a very small remainder. A pattern that somebody noticed and told somebody else. A measure kept and written and copied again when the writing began to wear thin. A question given over to another mind, which held it for a while and gave it on again. That is what came through, passed hand to hand across thousands of years, through people who did not know there was anything to pass, who thought they were counting grain, or keeping a boundary, or watching a hill in order to know when to plant. And the sky over all of them goes on turning, slowly, faithfully, and the same way, above the settlement on the slope, above the wood and the water going over the stones, above the half-built wall with the tools laid along the top of it, above the dark sea and the boat going out over it, above the room of tablets and the courtyard and the well and the shuttered room with the dust turning over in the dark. The sun stars coming up in the same order, out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down, and coming up again. The fires in the settlement burn down to ash, and a grey skin comes over them, and now and then some part of it settles inward and gives off a small sound, and is quiet again. The smoke goes up in a thin thread and does not lean, because there is no wind at that hour. The last lamp in the doorway of the room of tablets is carried away down the lane, and the light of it goes along the wall and round the corner, and is gone, and the doorway is dark. The beam of light in the shuttered room has already gone off the edge of the wall. The wood is dark, and the water goes over the stones in it, making the same small, steady noise it makes all night, that nobody is there to hear. The valley below the stone fills up with dark from the bottom the way it fills every evening until the far side is gone, and then the near side, and only the line of the ridge is left against the sky. The long, low run of it, the notch near the middle, the old tree, the far shoulder. And then that goes too. The voices grow faint and further off, and are hard to make out now, and then are only a sound without any words in it. And then not that. The frost comes back over the grass. It comes back the way it always comes, from the low ground upward, over the flat stone at the edge of the settlement, over the place where two people sat, over the shape their feet made in it, which is not there anymore, and which will not be there in the morning either. The hills stay where they are. They stayed where they were through all of it, through the watching and the counting and the singing and the forgetting of the singing. They were there before anybody sat down on that stone and looked at them, and they were there after, and the light will come up along the ridge again in the morning, a little further along than it came today, and it comes up the next morning a little further along, and the morning after that a little further still, and the frost is on the grass and goes off it as the light reaches across from the edges in without anybody watching it go, and the smoke stands up straight in the cold air because there is no wind yet, and the ash settles inward under its grey skin and gives off a small sound and is quiet. And in the wood at the bottom of the valley, the water goes over the stones, brown and shallow and quick, making the same small steady noise it has made all night and will make all day. And the light comes down through the leaves in pieces and moves about on the ground when the branches move, and the bank is damp under the trees where it is always damp, and the leaves that grow there, low, and in company with others of their own kind, with the fine down on the underside that can be felt with the ball of the thumb. And the tree leans out over the water the way it leans, and the tall flower stands at the edge of the clearing with the bells hanging down along one side of it, purple-brown and freckled inside, and nobody touches it. And the fire in the settlement goes down, and somebody puts a piece of wood on it, and it flares and settles. And the singing goes on above a child with her chin on her knees, and her eyes close and open and close, and she goes down into sleep with the words still going on over her, hearing them for a while from underneath, in the way that things are heard from underneath, and then not hearing them. And the wall stands in the dusk with the tools laid along the top of it, and the dust settling out of the air around it. And the stone in it keeps the warmth of the afternoon for a few hours, and then lets it go. And out on the wide sea, the boat lifts and settles and lifts, and the water goes by along the hull. And the stars are down in the swells, as well as up in the sky, broken and running and putting themselves back together. And the long deep swell goes on underneath the short ones, from a wind that is blowing somewhere else, a long way off, and does not change. And in the dry room the light comes in high through the small opening near the roof, and the dust turns over slowly in the shaft of it, and the piles of tablets stand along the wall, and nothing in there moves except the dust, and the clay on the shelf outside goes from grey to pale as it dries, from the edges in, and the wet shine comes off it, and by evening it is the colour of the wall behind it. And the flood comes up over the fields, slowly over weeks, until the whole low country is a brown sheet with the sky lying on it, upside down, and then goes down again, and the mud dries and cracks in the sun. And the cord comes out, knotted at fixed places along its length, and is pulled taut across the mud, and is taken up and laid out again. And on a step in the evening a string is plucked, and gives a note, and the note goes on for a while and dies away. And a finger goes down halfway along it, and it gives the note that is the same note and is not the same note, and off that place it is a mess, and back on it is right again. And in a hot courtyard the shadow of a stick lies short and dark and narrow, on pale dry ground, and the heat comes up off the ground into the face of anybody crouching there. And the shade under the far wall is so dark that nothing in it can be made out. And far off to the south the cool air goes on coming up out of the well, damp and smelling of wet rock, all day and all night, whether there is anybody leaning over the edge of it with their hands on the cool stone or not. And in a dark room somewhere a narrow beam comes in through a hole cut in a shutter and lies across the room at a slant, and the dust turns over slowly inside it, drifting and lifting and settling, and turning over again, lit and then not lit as it wanders out of the light and back into it, and the small white circle sits on the plaster. And the birds go over high up in their long ragged lines, calling, so far above the valley that they are only sound and small marks moving, and they are gone all winter. And in the spring the lines come back over the same valley in the other direction, and the fog gathers in the low ground in the evening, lying in the hollows, and thickens, and comes up over the trees, and stands among them, and it is quiet in it, and cold. And the seed goes off the head of the grass in the autumn, out on the wind, over a wall, over a road, and down into ground that nobody chose, and lies there through the winter under the frost, doing nothing. And above all of it the sky goes on turning, the same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down, unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice at all. And the moon fills and empties. So many nights from the thin curve to the full round, and so many back again, and then the nights when it is nowhere at all, and then the thin curve once more, low down, lying on its back. And it does that inside the long good turning, the way breathing goes on inside sleeping. And the sun goes along the ridge, away toward the cold end of the valley, a little further each morning, until it has gone as far as it goes, and hangs there a while as though it had forgotten what it was doing, and turns, and comes back, slowly, morning after morning, all the long way along the ridge toward the warm end, and reaches the far limit of that, and waits there too, and turns again, away and back, away and back, and the frost comes over the grass in the night from the low ground upward, and goes off it in the morning where the light reaches, and comes back the next night. And the fire burns down to a bed of soft red ash with a grey skin across it, and something in it settles inward and gives off a small sound and is quiet. And the smoke goes up in a thin thread, and the water in the wood goes over the stones, and the light comes down through the leaves in pieces and moves about on the ground, and the basket sits where it was set down, old, with the weave gone dark and smooth at the rim where a hand went, and the bark in the bottom of it is pale and cool and drying, and the pot in the fire steeps, and the water goes brown from the edges inward, and the smell of it fills the small dark inside of the house, bitter and green and warm. And somebody who was aching lies down on the other side of the fire, and turns over and is quiet, and after a long while their breathing changes and goes slow and even, and the wall stands in the dusk, and the dust settles out of the air, and the boat lifts and settles and lifts, and the weight closes over behind it, and the dust turns over in the shaft of light in the dry room, and the tablets stand along the wall in the half-dark, and the mud dries and cracks in the sun, and the string lies across the hollow board with nobody plucking it, and the shadow of the stick swings round and shortens and comes to its shortest and lengthens again and goes soft at the edges as the light goes, and then is not there at all. And the cool air comes up out of the well, and the dust turns over in the beam in the dark room where nobody can see it now, and the birds go over, and the fog thickens in the hollows, and the seed lies in the ground under the frost, and above all of it the sky goes on turning, unhurried, unchanged, and it is very early again, and cold, and a long time ago. There are a few low houses along the shoulder of a slope, and they are dark, and the people inside them are asleep, and in the open ground between them the fire has burned down to a bed of soft red ash with a grey skin across it. The air is completely still, in the way it is still only at that hour. The flat stone is at the edge of the settlement where it has always been, and the grass around it is grey with frost, and below it the ground falls away into a valley that is entirely dark. And beyond the valley the hills stand up black and soft-edged, and above the hills the sky has begun, very faintly, to lift. There is nobody sitting on the stone tonight. The ridge is there, all the same, the long, low run of it, the notch near the middle where the ground dips down and comes back up, the single old tree standing further along, leaning a little, the place further still where the ridge shoulders up and then eases down again and goes on toward the far end of the valley and is lost, and above it the stars are still out, though fewer than they were, and some of them wheel round through the night and come back to the same place before morning, and others rise on the one side of the world and cross over and go down on the other. And some are gone for part of the year altogether and are not to be found anywhere, and then come back. And the sky is a little grey now, not light, only less dark at the low edge above the ridge, so that the black of the hills has come away from the black of the sky and become a thing of its own, an outline, a long dark shape lying down across the bottom of the world, and the stars over the valley thin away to 2 or 3, and then to 1 low down, and then that one goes as well, and the light comes. It comes first as a thinning behind the ridge, a place where the dark is not as thick as the dark beside it, and then as a warmth low down, a colour with no edge to it, spreading slowly along behind the hills, and then the sky above goes pale and paler, and the last of the blue goes out of it, and there is a single bright point at one edge of the notch, hard and gold and very small, and it widens and runs along a little, and spills, and the frost on the grass around the stone turns from grey to white, and the valley below stays dark a while longer, holding the last of the night in it, before that too begins to fill. And there is nobody there to see it, and it happens anyway in the same way at the same slow pace, a little further along the ridge than yesterday. And the smoke goes up straight from the ash, because there is no wind yet, and the day starts, and it goes over, the way a day goes over. The frost goes off the grass from the edges in. The shade under the walls draws in and hardens through the middle of the day, and then lets out again the other way. The shadows lie down long and blue across the slope in the afternoon, and go on lengthening until they lose their edges, and the light goes off the top of the ridge last of all, and the valley fills up with dark, from the bottom, until the far side has gone, and then the near side, and only the line of the ridge is left against the sky, the long low run of it, the notch near the middle, the old tree, the far shoulder, and then that goes too, and the fires go down to ash under a grey skin, and something in them settles inward and gives off a small sound and is quiet and does not do it again for a long while. And the last lamp is carried in from a doorway somewhere, and the light of it goes along a wall and round a corner, and the doorway is dark. And the water in the wood goes over the stones with nobody there, and the boat goes out over the dark water with the wake closing behind it, and the dust turns over in the beam in the shuttered room where the beam is no longer, and the tablets stand along the wall in the dry room in the dark, and the cool air comes up out of the well all night, and the sky goes on turning, the sun stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over and going down, and the moon fills and empties and fills, and the sun goes away along the ridge and comes back along it, and the frost comes and goes and comes, and the birds go over and are gone all winter and come back over the same valley in the other direction, and the seed lies in the ground and does nothing, and the hills stay where they are. They were there before any of it. They will be there after. And the year turns and comes round and turns again. The light comes up at the notch in the middle of the ridge, and the frost is on the grass, and the days are short. And then it has moved on a little, and a little, and a little, and it is past the old tree, and the ground is soft enough to work. And then it is further out, toward the far shoulder, and the berries are black on the bushes down by the river, and hands come back stained. and then it turns and comes back the whole long way, and the light breaks once more at the notch, and it is cold again, and the fires are built high, and the food is put by, and everybody is inside by dusk. And that happens again the next year, in the same way, and the year after that, and so many times after that. The frost coming over the grass in the night and going off it in the morning, the ash settling under its grey skin, the water going over the stones in the wood, the tide coming up the shallows and going back down them, the moon filling and emptying and filling, the birds going over high up in their long ragged lines and being gone all winter and coming back over the same valley in the other direction, over and over, for a very long time, longer than can be held in the mind at all. And the settlements come down slowly, and the grass grows over the low lines where the walls were, and after a while it is only a slight unevenness in a field, and the clay goes back into the mud it came out of, and the boats rocked in the shallows with the water going in and out of them, and the wells fill in, and the songs are sung by fewer and fewer people, and then by a few, and then by one, and then the fire goes down, and everybody goes in, and the light comes up along the ridge in the morning all the same, a little further along than it came the day before, and the smoke goes up straight because there is no wind at that hour, and the frost holds the shape of whatever has stood in it for a while in the early part of the morning until the light reaches across, and then it does not hold it any more, and the valley fills with dark in the evening the way it always fills, and the hills stay where they are, and above them the sky goes on turning, slowly and faithfully, and in the same way it has always turned. The same stars coming up in the same order out of the same edge of the world, and crossing over, and going down, and coming up again, unhurried, unchanged, taking no notice at all. And the ridge lies along the bottom of the sky, dark and low and long. The run of it, the notch, the tree, the far shoulder, and the light when it comes will come a little further along,